everybody. Welcome to LitRPG Audiobook Podcast. I am Ray. I will be reviewing some recent and classic LitRPG audiobooks for you today. Today, I'm going to begin with something I think most people might be surprised I'm doing. Lion's Quest, Undefeated by Michael Scott Earl. Narrated by Joshua Story. And how can you not like a narrator whose last name is Story? It's almost would be even more perfect if he not only narrated, but he wrote his own stuff and then recorded it. Awesomeness. Length is 11 hours and 45 minutes.
There were 10 seconds left on the clock, and I stepped toward the exit door of the prep room. Maybe I should have felt nervous, or I should have felt the adrenaline coursing through my veins like a molten fire. But I only felt the same sensation that had plagued my mind for the last year: boredom. Jin couldn't see my skill selection, but the world would once the timer reached 0 and the doors opened to the arena. Deanie would then tell me what class and skill selection Jin had picked, and he would coach me through the battle. Well, in actuality, Deanie was the only one on my crew with a microphone that would communicate into my earpiece. Jax, Garf, and Bantog would scream at my cornerman, and he'd process their recommendations, the battle, my movements, and then distill his strategy into what he said into the earpiece. A lot of fighters would use multiple feeds of audio from their coaches, but I always found it too distracting to have a bunch of people screaming in my ear.
Okay, so this book is very similar. I just did a recent review on Secrets of the Old Ones by Blaze Corvin, and this reminds me a lot of that book, just on the fact that either you really, really love this book, or you can just walk away from it. There's a lot of people, like with Secrets of the Old One, once they've read it, they've sunk their teeth into it. They're just blown away, and they just want more. Fortunately for fans of this series, there's more than one book thus far in this series. But man, oh man, am I going to get in some trouble today, okay? This book was really hard for me to care about. And I tried. One of my favorite authors, again, Blaze Corvin, has repeatedly stated that this was one of his favorite series. And whenever someone says, hey, what series are you waiting on? He eventually mentions this book. A lot of people mention this book. It has a lot of love. But me, I just don't see the appeal. In a world where game players are treated like sports stars, Leo Lennox is the best player who has ever walked, talked, chewed bubblegum, or put on shoes. Sold shoes, had little sweatshops of shoes being made in his name, that sort of stuff. You'll know this because every single person in the book, everybody, refers to him or calls him Champ. Everyone. Constantly. To a point that it feels like it's said every third word. The Champ said, hey, Champ. He was talking to himself, so he had to refer to the Champ as the Champ. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so now I realize this is really in reference to boxers who, once they earn a title, prefer to be referred to as champ. I know this for a fact because I have watched Rocky a bajillion times. Well, actually a bajillion and a half times, but when you start getting the numbers that big, does a half really matter? It's like eternity. Do you have a piece of eternity, a piece of infinity? No. So you get it, okay? I get it, you get it, I understand it, you understand it. But it's still annoying as all hell. And I still find it difficult to conceive of a day where someone who plays video games will ever be treated like a football star or a boxing champion, okay? There's just certain things that I just do not ever see happening in the real world. There's a lot of folks out there who play video games, and unless you really, really are a massive part of that world, you cannot name one person who has won a video game contest. Seriously. I have played Pac-Man, but I can't tell you who the greatest Pac-Man player ever was or is or whatever. Same with Donkey Kong. And if you want to get into other things, I can't tell you who the greatest player of Warcraft is or the greatest player of Skyrim because it really doesn't matter. It's just in the overall scheme of things, it's a video game. And this goes back to those tropes where you have a story and it's a news team comes on. They start talking about the events that happened in a video game. And the first thing I want to just do is just scream, really, who would watch something like that? Now, I know there's YouTube channels out there that do a lot of that sort of stuff, but in the overall scheme of things, one player in one server, because there's got to be a billion servers out there for a million different players to play on, it would not be that big a deal. It really wouldn't. The events on one server would not overwhelm a news source. They might talk about what's new in the game and things like that, or maybe have something interesting that occurred with one player. But, like I go to the online games, with Jason. I can't even think of it right now, with Kat and, Alfred. It's the same thing there. Jason did this today. The player Jason and Alexion did this. That's one server. It's not the whole game. It may be in the book, but honestly, if they have a game like that, it's going to be a 25 thousand different servers and that sort of thing. So those things drive me nuts. And this is just one of those points where I go right off the top. Now, Leo, the MC, is admittedly an awesome video gamer. And so he is sought out to help playtest and develop the most realistic video game of all time. Of course, okay? His time in the game is undoubtedly the best part of the book. But we spend more time with the old champ in the real world than we do in the game. Where all he does is whine about how he isn't happy anymore and he needs a change. The real world sucks for Leo Lennox because women throw themselves at him and it's boring for him. He can't go get a slice of pizza without getting hit on. Oh, my life is so hard. Oh, my. I would hate to have beautiful young ladies throw themselves at my feet on a daily basis. I would hate to have people come up and ask me for autographs just because they adore the way I do things. If you want an autograph from me for doing this show, I'll be happy to send one out to you. But truly, let's just be realistic about it. It's never going to happen, okay? And so for him to be all whiny about how great his life is, how much money he has, and just how boring his life has become, I'm going to Bugs Bunny it right now, okay? It's rabbit season. There, you got it, okay? So by the 10,000th time a beautiful chick, comes on and you couldn't care less, let me just say, it just drove me nuts, okay? Lennox is constantly sought after, and you have to ask why. Seriously, why? Aside from his video playing skills, he has literally no personality. None. Plus, all the stuff about Jew this and Jew that with his attorneys and things, that kind of bothered me. It was kind of just a little bit off, just off-color stuff like that. It just did not have a place as far as I was concerned. Now, I understand it, and if that's what Michael Scotterill wants to write about, power to him. But it was a little bothersome to me, okay? And I'm pretty open-minded about a lot of stuff. Not so much there, and you can show his manager's Jewish in a whole lot of other ways. But you don't have to make it sound like some neo-Nazi kind of guy's worst nightmare, okay? And I'm not trying to bash it and say he's being racist, but it was just a little uncomfortable feeling for me. Now, I guess that I'm most disappointed in that I was looking for a more gaming-style book. Instead, we get a good chunk of the book revolving around his contract negotiations, which are so exciting. Okay, I often found myself hovering outside of, in real life. Okay, I often find myself hovering around the law offices of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, trying to gab a gander of contract negotiations going on. Are things getting around the house? Better call Saul and listen into our contract negotiations. Oh, and for the longest time, I was going back and forth on whether he was really in a game or in an alternate reality, because it just did not make sense to me. Really, honestly, I had no clue what was happening and why it was more in the real world. And let me just say, the kicker was where we finally get to a point where you can actually spend time in the game, and the book ends. Not my cuppa of tea at all. Okay, honestly, LitRPG should be about something like 80 to 90% in game, with a few notable exceptions, such as Dave Wilmarth's The Land of the Undying, okay? There, the setting carries as much impact as the gaming section, sometimes more. I fluctuated between what I wanted to read more, the stuff that was happening in the game or the stuff that was happening in the real world. This book felt like it wanted that to be the case. It wanted to be as cool as Wilmar's, zombie apocalypse setting. We have a super secret game being developed. Never heard that one before. Ooh, I got to ride on a super cool, hyped up helicopter plane. Ooh, super hot president wants me to sign on and maybe get it on later. Maybe, but not till I sign that contract. Ooh, Ooh, I spent one whole session in the game, and then I had to figure out how to get back into the game that's rattling around in my mind, because I have to sign that contract first. And do I really want to sign that contract first, even though the rest of my life in the outside world is so insanely boring and it's just is not as fulfilling as it used to be? I don't know. That's the bulk of the book. All the action takes place in the real world, aka the ring. Okay. If this was a boxing match, then the gameplay would be set between rounds, okay, where the boxer sits on a little stool, gets rubbed down, and is given some water to spit. That's the gameplay section. The rest of it's all in the ring, completely backwards, and not all that riveting. I really did not find this exciting. The book should have been longer and had more game time. Everyone seems to wonder why this is MSE's least popular novel series. I can tell you why. In fact, I think I just have. Because Leo is a boring Superman character that gets his ass kissed wherever he goes. And forgive me, I'm swearing. But he has no kryptonite. He has the entire world at his feet, and all he does is mope. Even when he has an amazing opportunity handed to him, he mopes. The action is really lacking, and the drama is more like Beverly Hills Housewife than Last Action Hero. And yes, I said Last Action Hero, which is a comedy and is a farce, because that had more action in it than this book, as far as I was concerned. It had more exciting features, and it really had more to say than this book. Who wouldn't buy a series like this? Who wouldn't? I don't know. It's not that hard to figure out. That's why the series is not that popular. And again, I don't want to pound this overly hard, but the fact is, I have tried several of MSC's series, and the only one that really appeals to me is Tamer. And even I find that to be repetitive and predictable. The story has only grown minimally since it started, but I still enjoy it. I will try Space Knight, but my taste for Lion's Quest has been quenched. I would really need a lot of convincing to get to the next book, because I can see it being teased out like this. The hot CEO that doesn't get with him but continues to tease him. Maybe something happens in real life that forces him to spend less time in the game than he and Anascript or Arnoscript or whatever the company's called would like, and so on and so forth. I don't even have to look. I can tell you that's just about how it's going to go. And I can guess, honestly, I don't know if MSC doesn't like his game world all that much, or he wanted to tell the story of a gamer more than he did about the game or the gamer in the game. But I could give a crap less for Leo Lennox and his life outside the game. It did literally nothing for me. Now, Joshua Story did really great as the narrator. Very impressed by his work. I think that he added a great deal to the mix and would be a nice addition to the LitRPG community. I mean, like, he's done this and maybe one or two other things for MSC, but he really should be considered, a part of the club, because he really adds elements of emotion and desire. And when the hot CEO is talking, he does a fine job sounding sexy, seductive, and mysterious all at once. Leo sounds fierce as all get out, and he definitely carries an air about him that he is confident in what he's doing when he is doing something he wants to do. Honestly, Story is the best part of this audiobook. I give him an 8.5 on vocals alone because he carried this story like Atlas with a broken shoulder. I mean, there was the weight of the world on one busted up arm, and he managed to make it work. Okay, I know he's done a few other things, like Rock God and Rose Boy for MSC, but I will be skipping those completely. First off, Rock God is not LitRPG, so I won't have to listen to it to review. Rose Boy, I'm not sure, but again, I'll give that maybe a try, just because if it is LitRPG. But I mean, if it's not LitRPG from him anymore, I'm going to stay away, because I'm not a fan of the Destroyer series. That's one of those stories that I kept hearing everybody tell me, oh man, when he goes crazy, when the elves show up, you're going to love it. You're going to get into it. And I tried. And I was like, that's it. I mean, honestly, I don't know if it was too overhyped for me, but it just made me want to snore just through the whole thing. I just did not like the main character. So this series right here, like I say, it's one of those ones that either you totally, totally love it, and I'm going by the whole series, because this book right here, a lot of people refer to it a lot. I mean, just overly done, in my opinion, they refer to this book. Either you love it, or you don't have any use for it. Like I say, it reminds me of Secret of the Old Ones, because I'm a big fan of Secret of the Old Ones, and I think that it really deserves more attention and more love than what it gets. This book, I think it is a balloon. overhyped, overblown, and it just goes off into the wind. It gets lost. I don't know what it is. Again, like I say, I think he wants to write about a gamer and not the game. And the LitRPG stuff is kind of really squished off into a corner. And I would say it like this, even if it didn't have anything to do with LitRPG, I mean, not a smidge, not a pinch, not a molecule. If this book had nothing to do with LitRPG, I would still feel this way, just because the real world stuff is not exciting. It did not grab my attention, and I could have cared less about whether he was going to sign a contract. You knew he was going to sign the contract. It just took 3/4 of the book for him to do it. 3/4 of the book. I mean, maybe I'm off on that by a little bit, but it was a hell of a long way into the book before he signed it. A hell of a long way. So, why drag that sort of stuff out? I mean, there was another book I reviewed a long time back, and I was saying how, it was a good intro for, people who were new to the genre, because it did show, some thought, and it showed them doing contract negotiations and team building and that sort of thing. But even then, it was about 20 to 25% before they got into the story for the game. This goes a lot longer, even when they do get into the game the first time. It's just a pinch. It's just a pinch. So my final score is 7.3 stars. I could go a lot lower, but the story is not horrible. I didn't hate the story as much as it just drove me crazy, and it did not capture my attention. And I know there are people out there who like this story a whole lot. So I am going to give it a 7.3. I mean, honestly, my inclination would have been to go a lot lower initially, but I've thought about this. I've thought about this for about 2 weeks, because I wanted to do a review on this since I did Secret of the Old Ones. And this all unto itself, I've had to think about this for a long time to score. And I think the writing is really top notch, but the character and the plot just go under my radar. They just go down. So I am going to give it a 7.3 stars. I'm going to be sticking with Tamer for now, because Lion's Quest feels less like a LitRPG novel than it does an exaggerated autobiography by Eddie Plant, a.k.a. Peter Dinklage's character from the movie Pixels. If you've seen that, that's who I see when I listen to this book. Okay, Leo is Eddie Plant. No way around it. I think the attitude and all that, it's just, that's him. That's how I see it. So, sorry, but 7.3 stars, guys. All right, well, next up, I'm going to talk about Critical Failures by Robert Bevan, narrated by Jonathan Sleep. And do not let that make you think that he is a snorefest or sleep-inducing person. He's a really good narrator. Length is 8 hours and 3 minutes.
Tim tried to get to his feet and run, but his feet couldn't find the floor. The monster yanked something out of the back of his shoulder with a wince. An arrow. The front half of the shaft was coated in black blood, which dripped from the barbed tip.
"What a pack,"
said the monster. It dropped the arrow and looked at its clawed hands. 2 new screams pried Tim's attention away from the giant monster in front of him. He wasn't alone in here with the creature. There was some small comfort in that, but who the hell were these people? A short, stout guy with a thick red beard and metal armor sat next to the beast. His feet barely touched the floor. Tim thought of Humpty Dumpty. The other guy was dressed in a long white nightshirt and looked suspiciously like... "Julian?"
"Huh?"
said the monster, looking up. The squat, bearded guy jumped to his feet and ran across the floor of the... Where the hell were they? This wasn't the chicken hut. He ran through a canvas flap of a doorway and fell forward and out of sight. Judging by the sound of the ugh shortly afterward, it hadn't been a far fall. "Hold your fire!" came a sound from outside. This can't be real. We couldn't actually be...
So the first thing I'm going to do with this review is kind of give you a bit of a warning. All right, just right off the front here, right off the top, if you cannot stand rude, offensive humor, politically incorrect humor, or jokes that are normally bantered about by a bunch of 13-year-olds, then this book is not for you. I think I've stated my position on humor many times. It can be crude, it can be nasty, it can be volatile, it can be offensive, so long as it is funny. I keep going back to thinking about the Steel Alchemist book, where there was a ton of potty humor, but it just did not work. In an instance where you go for gross and nasty humor, but fail on the humor, all you end up with is gross and nasty. Now, that being said, I really enjoyed the way Robert Bevan tells his tale. Yes, the humor is crude, and I can tell you as a man who spent years DMing, because I have DM'd since I was probably 12 years old, and did so until I was probably 27. I got married when I was 29, so there was a 2-year period that stopped DMing, and then I got married. What does that tell you guys? I don't know. But that's for you to decide. But I can tell you that it reflects a lot of the puerile joviality that is often displayed in such a setting. In other words, there were a lot of crappy, nasty, dirty jokes that are said repeatedly by the men that played those games, even sometimes the women, okay? So I don't want to be sexist, but the people that played, it did get a little raunchy from time to time. Truly, for those of us who are old enough to have lived through the D&D craze, who were mere teenagers and male teenagers are raunchy, randy SOBs, and this absolutely fit that tone of the era and reflects reality in a way that I might actually be a bit of ashamed of today. The story centers on a group of gamers who get a new game master, someone they've never met. Cue the music. Dun, dun, dun! So you know trouble is at hand already, okay? The group and some innocent bystanding relatives manage to anger this new GM and end up getting set into their game world right after their characters, who they have just become, have committed a horrible, horrible crime at their gameplay session start. So they end up in some really hot water and have to figure out a way to, get out of it pretty quickly. Naturally, things devolve as they only can when a bunch of idiots get thrown into an unexpected circumstance and refuse to act like adults, which is the whole story. Basically, it boils down to what can we do, how do we get home, how can we get revenge on the nasty GM, and so on and so forth. Though simplistic, the book is really fun, and I laughed a lot. This is game lit, okay? It's not crunchy LitRPG, and it plays out just like you would expect, with them doing things to level up and get new items or spells. The best character to me is the half-orc, because he just gets dumped on so much by the rest of the party, okay? Again, I'm going to warn you, much of the humor in this book revolves around poop, butts, and men's junk. So if hearing about how the half-orc crapped himself isn't going to bring a tear of joy to your eye, do like Count Olaf says, and look away, look away, look away, because stuff like that happens a whole heck of a lot. Now, Jonathan Sleep is fantastic as the narrator. His voices only add to the humor, and he brings each character to life in little unexpected ways. He easily plays the thing straight and gets into the goofy just as simply. The best two voices were the malicious GM and the half-orc. Fans of Johnny Test, and yes, I have young kids, so that's how I know who Johnny Test is, will recognize that while he may not have used the voice, he carried the attitude of Eugene Bling Bling Boy Hamilton. And that's exactly how I envisioned the character. The GM was just Bling Bling Boy, from start to finish. He was a heavy, overweight, guy with some problems, with acne and stuff. And like, Bling Bling Boy doing stuff, so I'm gonna get you guys. That's it. That was the whole thing. He's punishing them for their mistreatment of him because he has the power to do so with some magic dice. So beware, Sleep will keep you up all night listening to him. Now, this really isn't what I would call a highly inventive book. There isn't a lot of literary credit going on here, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a fun and addictive ride. Everything doesn't have to be Shakespeare like Merchant of Tikpa, okay, just to be a good, fun read. I had a blast listening to this book. I can't count how many times I laughed, giggled, guffawed, or gnorked. Yes, I gnorked. Okay, I admit it. I don't even know what that last word meant, but I like alliteration. So I had to throw that in there. The sheer audacity of this book, in a climate of such political correctness, would never let it survive today if it came out. Just on that part alone, I have to say I'm awarding 8 stars. just because I had so much fun. Is this brilliant and incisive? No, it's not. It's not something you walk away going, man, I can't believe he even conceived of that. Where did that come from? That is not the case at all. No, you'll never ask that question. What you'll do is you'll say, I laughed myself silly when the orc crapped his pants, or because of this or that. That sort of stuff is there because it is just meant for super stupid, silly fun. And I am all for super silly, stupid fun. All for it. And there's nothing better in life. I'm driving down the road. If I see a cow, I will roll my window down and yell at the cow. I don't say moo moo, meow meow, or none of that stuff. I don't yell at cows and say, moo. I don't expect them to know what I'm talking about. But I will tell them that, their horn's not on straight, or, that they need to get a diet because they're getting ready to, get butchered. So lose some weight, ladies, and maybe you'll make it to the next time. I do stuff like that because I just like being stupid. It has no real seriousness in life. And I do not take life seriously. I go through a serious moment every single day that I'm awake until I am done working. And as soon as I'm done working, I enjoy just stupid little things. And this is a really guilty pleasure. And I don't even know why it's a guilty pleasure. It's a pleasure because I had so much fun listening to this. And I will continue going through the series because this is a fun book. Now, if you're going to ask me, I'm not going to give you spoilers, but no, there's probably about 12 books in the series so far. I don't even know how many books are in the series. Very obviously, they don't make it home. They don't make it home in book 1 at least. I don't know if they make it home in book 12 or 14. Honestly, if I've got a cash cow that keeps on producing milk, brother, I'm milking that cow for everything it's worth. So I don't see the group making it back home unless he swaps out. Don't know. But I can tell you this, I'll be there drinking that milk every chance I get. So 8 stars, you will enjoy the story. All right, so the next book I'm going to review is perhaps going to be a surprise for you. I'm going to review Star Conqueror by Jason Cipriano, narrated by Luke Daniels, with a book length of 7 hours and 23 minutes.
Guys? Turner's voice called over the ship's intercom system as the emergency lighting flickered to life, filling the chamber with a dim red glow. We've got a problem. Can you come to the bridge? That wasn't the most pleasant way to get woken up, but at least I woke up in the most beautiful company I could have hoped for. Sometime in the middle of our lovemaking, Tulip and I had found our way to one of the empty crew quarters. Turner's call of alarm woke us both in the not-so-soft crew bed. Tulip curled up against me, our arms wrapped around each other. She yawned cutely with a hint of fang as I rubbed my eyes. No rest for heroes, yes? I let out a chuckle as I kissed Tulip on the forehead. I guess not. It took us longer than I'm sure Turner wanted to get ourselves out of bed, cleaned up and dressed. It took us far less time to race across the Orion from the crew quarters to the bridge. Turner was sitting at the engineering station, rubbing his chin as he looked over his screens. Looking up as we ran in, he grinned at us. Sorry to disturb you, lovebirds. Tulip and I both blushed a bit at that, making Turner's grin broaden.
Oh, lordy. Where is J.A. Cipriano? I had to do this review because there are people out there who have no clue how good a story this was, or why J.A. has gone MIA just like MSE. Okay? MOUSE. He kind of disappeared in the same way that Michael Scott Earl did, and for the same reasons. I can almost guarantee you, having pretty much sussed out what's going on now, it's the same thing with MSE for J.A. And I think that there's a possibility that with MSE getting himself back on track, J.A. Cipriano will as well. So hopefully I'm going to get this out there just so you all can maybe, because I think this was out very shortly before he got chopped off of Amazon. And hopefully when he does get a comeback, you can kind of slip in and see it. And if not, if he has his book on other platforms and you don't want to wait for the audiobook to return on Amazon or Audible, get it elsewhere, because this is a really good book. And I can pretty much say, after seeing a recent post by Michael Scott Earl himself, in which he wrote that he said Amazon has stated that they felt his books were being read at a rate faster than a human could read, which was the cause for his books to get ripped down off their sites. And again, I think that his output and J.A. Cipriano's match up pretty heavy. I mean, if you look at them, they were 1 or 2 books a month, pow, 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 one after another. And so if you were a big fan like I was, I read everything J.A. Cipriano put out. You were grabbing it and taking care, zipping through it as much as you could. And thankfully, they were both really fast writers who could get away with that. Well, of course, algorithms choke you as you go through. And this is one of those cases where they got bitten behind by the algorithms. So with Star Conqueror, Jason Cipriano has created an homage to one of my all-time favorite movies, The Last Starfighter, and made it a lit RPG to boot. Okay, this is like getting ice cream with sprinkles when all you really asked for was some plain yogurt. In fact, I would say that he almost molded Alex Rogan and Greg from the movie into one character. How crazy is that? In fact, for those of you who don't know, this book is a rather loving homage. It holds a ton of 80s references and nods to this movie. That's how much of an homage it is. It's not just about the movie, it's also about the 80s. Okay, and as an added bonus, it also is what is known as one of those harem type books, because the main character, David Briggs, collects hot chicks and takes them like it was the last night in the universe, and he has a huge box of Viagra lace condoms. Now, while the sex isn't as heavy as it could be, because J.A. does hold back a little, it does happen, so don't get all snooty if you don't like harem or sex-laced books. This is a solid ride, no pun intended with the sex stuff, but it could have been a lot raunchier than what it is, okay? I mean, it's a good story. Either way, the story is completely on fire, and I personally think that this is probably his best work or some of his best work ever. I love a lot of his writings, but this wingding blasted me out of the water into a deep fryer. It is sizzling with hot action, sex, violence, and to top it off, the MC can breathe fire. Okay, so there's a lot happening in the book. Cipriano clearly loved writing this book. It literally leaps off the page and superfly snookers you into submission. You will not want to come up for air again until you're purple in the face. And I'm so jazzed. I think I'm totally going to go back and re-listen to this again tomorrow. I do have some driving to do for work, so I'm thinking that might be what I slip in to the car ride for tomorrow, just because I enjoyed this book so much the first time around. Okay, and I have to comment on the incredibly amazing job that Luke Daniels has done with this book. The man is a Class A level narrator. He takes this story and runs off with it like he is taking it home to chain up in his basement and have, I don't know what you do with things that you chain up in your basement. So I'm just going to back off that line. But he just blows your mind. Really, I suspect that he's my really solid second favorite narrator at this point. The more I hear from him, the more I'm impressed. And in this case, his Briggs is it's scary impressive. And the man can really tell a story. I mean, if you want to really hear Daniels, check out like The Iron Druid or, Ascend Online. Anything he does, it's always top quality, top notch. And I say this every time because I'm such a huge fan of the Iron Druid series. His Oberon the dog impression is just, you'll never have anybody else do a dog impression as good. Everybody does Scooby-Doo. Reggie, like say, Scoob, we got to get out of here. Where's a Scooby snack? Row. Or was that Astro who talks like that? Rorge. Yeah, I'm not sure. So those are the two top dog impressions, Astro and Scooby-Doo. Oberon knocks them both out of the park. Okay, and here he brings that kind of talent, the man who can do a better dog impression than Scooby-Doo or Astro. He brings that to the table. I mean, it's scary how good he really is. I can only say that he is very pleasant to listen to, and he nails every single character's personality. And he does voices like he was Rich Little on meth. My God, I know I have white hair, guys. Do you people even remember Rich Little? I mean, not the older guys like myself who do. I'm talking about the younger people who read LitRPG. This is like their coming of age stories. This is your Lord of the Rings. I don't want to say I was around when Lord of the Rings first came out, but I was around when it was just starting to become popular as a kid. So, I'm not exactly a young spring chicken. And so when I make references like Rich Little, do you guys get it? I mean, if not, go and look it up. It's just same as Jonathan Winters. If I said Jonathan Winters on meth, I don't know if you'd get it. You know, Robin Williams on meth, he doesn't need meth. That would be about the same thing. But that's Luke Daniels for you. The man can really, really, really inspire you via his vocal cords. Like I say, for me, Jeff Hayes is just incredible and amazing, and I really like Jeff's style. But Luke, he comes in a close second. I mean, it's a sheet of paper thin difference between the two of them. Okay? I have to comment just on that because Luke just makes it so much fun that he just rips the story to pieces. He just takes it and runs with it. And I can't go without even saying how much I like the cover of the book. With me, Cipriano's covers are a gamut of great mid-level art. The cover is stunning. And if I were a teen, I would have that as a poster on my wall. Seriously, as it stands, you can't deny that it grabs your eye and squeezes you until you want to learn more about the book. It is hardcore 100%. Now, Cipriano is one of my favorite writers, but this book has literally made me rethink my grading system, okay? Because it's such a blast. It fires on every cylinder, and it takes off like it was the Mach 5 in a competition like Death Race 2000. I mean, can you imagine the Mach 5 in Death Race 2000? That would be a real movie, okay? I can only say that I want more of this. More. So, final score is 8.3 stars. I love the book. I want more. I'm hoping that some of you out there will now hear this and write Amazon again, or if you haven't, just write them and ask them why such an awesome book is no longer available to purchase. Seriously, if MSC is about to return 100%, there's no reason that we should be denied our JAC. And that is exactly why I did this review. I know that most people out there are not going to be able to get this, but I want them to know what they're missing. Okay, just like with Secrets of the Old Ones, I think there were a lot of people out there who had no clue that there's a really great book that exists that is super fun and just steals, your imagination, takes over everything that you can think of, and fills in a whole new world for you. It's the same thing here. Jason Cipriano, he's done a lot of good stuff like Doom Marine, and things like that. Like I love his The Pen is Mightier series. This book, and again, I am such a fan of the 80s movie, The Last Starfighter. I mean, it's a game-lit movie, okay? If you've not seen it, go out and watch the darn thing because it's amazing. It's really good. And special effects are still pretty square because they were early special effects with computers, but it doesn't really detract from the movie. They're pretty top quality even today. I've seen a lot of movies today that are made that don't have the quality of this. So I really wanted to get out there and say, please, 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 don't forget about, Jason Cipriano. Check it out. See what you can do because the book is intense. It's so fun. And I don't know. I just think that if you can get it anywhere, get your hands on it, get it and listen, because you will not be disappointed with this story. 8.3 stars is just me just trying to hold back and not go crazy and say, hey, it's an 11.5. It was a fun story all the way around. I enjoyed it, and I regret that, I can't get another book in this series because it is that fun. Okay, so the next book I'm doing is Anomaly by K.T. Hanna, narrated by Andrea Parsnow, with a book length of 12 hours and 33 minutes.
Murmur staggered as the guild castle shot into focus around her. Nausea swept over her, adding to the volcano of anger in her gut. It leaked through her mental shielding, no matter how dense she thought the wall was. Squinting against the harsh daylight, she saw a wave of confusion sweep over Telvar's workers. Construction work ground to a halt. The builders stumbled in their tracks, their materials falling to the ground as they braced themselves against any stable surface. Any attempt she made to calm those whirling thoughts only resulted in them spinning further out of control. Murmur's head spun, pounding like someone had taken a hammer to it. Just a few more hits and her skull might burst. She fell to her knees, struggling to move from the recall pad. A mental shield slammed down around her discordant thoughts, plunging her mind into blissful stillness. It momentarily subdued the roiling sea of emotion within her by shocking her as if a bucket of ice water had been thrown over her head. A scaled hand reached toward her.
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start this review with a caveat by saying I'm not a huge fan of slice of life books. I know, for example, Ramon, he does like slice of life. He likes those stories that just kind of just tell a little daily story in the life of. I'm not. I like to have a point to what my story is going to be. We need to get from A to B to Z, and there's things that happen along the way. I really like that much better than just kind of aimless wandering. I try to love them, but they really do very little for me. And like I said, in my eyes, a book needs direction. For example, I don't believe Lord of the Rings would have been all that popular if it was just a buddy road trip tale about Sam, Frodo, Pip, and Merry flouncing around the countryside as they sort of made their way off the drop-off a ring. And this is my big problem with Neil Gaiman's American Gods novel. It was a whole lot of tire spinning to get to an ending that could have been accomplished in a whole lot less pages. A whole lot. Okay, so me and Slice of Life, we don't get along very often unless it involves Dexter Morgan. Now, KT Hanna has released her second book in the Somnia online series, and this is one of those tire spinning numbers that I get hung up with so often. Remember how I thought about Daniel Shinhofen's latest Apocalypse Gate book? And I hope I said that right, Daniel. I don't want to mispronounce your name, Shinhofen. If I didn't say it right, let me know. I apologize. Well, I have to say, this kind of mirrors that in a lot of ways. It does the same kind of tire spinning and not a lot of story advancement. Murmur, Sin, and the others all kind of get into to figure out the situation now that our MC, Murmur, has been clued into the fact of what is actually going on with her. Her situation has changed. It's pretty dire, in fact. We do get a reveal as to what happened to the corporate boss once he entered the game, and why the AIs have Murmur picking up chunks of black rock all over the area. Those things are kind of revealed. The rest of the time, we see Murmur's mother and boss, IRL, trying to figure out what happened and how to help Murmur, or we get Murmur having a hissy fit over her condition against her friends, and the way all the others all kept the thing secret from her. I think she and Sin have an apology and reconciliation at least twice over the same thing, and Murmur snaps on her team numerous times, even though that she knows what they did was really done to protect her and to kind of keep her safe. And that's pretty much the entire story the whole way through. Murmur does advance some levels and takes umbrage with her condition in some way, and then vents on those around her. Then she makes up or apologizes. Now, this sounds a bit lackluster, and I can't say that I didn't enjoy the story or the characters and how they progressed, because I did. I like Murmur as a character. I like Sin as a character. There's a lot of things to go on. The story is enjoyable. I also think we'll be seeing an AI go rogue, and the non-villain from the first book kind of grows into his role as a real proper villain coming. I also stand by my assessment in my first review that at some point, I think that Sin is going to confess her romantic love for Murmur, which will throw yet another kink in the gears for poor Mur. It hasn't happened yet, but I think it's only a matter of time before that comes to light, too. I could be way off base, but I really think that that's the case. I did enjoy Murmur growing in power, but I thought it was that they added a druidic element and giving her a pet as well. I think her Psionicist class was interesting enough on its own, and the only reason I can see her getting Snowy, the wolf, is so that when Sin does confess her feelings, that she had, that Murmur actually has someone she can go and talk to that won't judge her. So, did I hate the book? No, not at all. But I certainly felt like there was a sophomore slide, as the tale didn't progress much any way than I've already pretty much said. It could have really used some more fights. The guild clash was fun, but it didn't have as much impact as the train scene from the first book. Train scene. Not what you think. Not what you think. An MMORPG type of train. I mean, really, people. Murmur's not that kind of girl. Okay? But there was a lot of stuff that we could have had. Andrea Parsnow, or Andrea Parsnow, continues to do her magic here. She conveys a ton of bits of emotional expressions from each character. For example, Tell is deeply concerned, and you get a fatherly concern in his way with speaking with Murmur, whereas Sin definitely acts much more clinging and tied to Murmur. She makes the AI that is seeking the black stones seem like he's becoming much more treacherous, with each appearance and will be developing to the real heavy of the story as the story continues. The only thing I really don't get, and this is just a minor thing that I noticed, the female AI is supposed to be a little bit mysterious and unstable. I'd have almost wanted her to be played out like Harley Quinn, so that when she was serious, you knew something was really bad. Okay, when Harley Quinn gets serious, you know there's some shit about to go down. Okay, again, Andrea is really great here, but I think the female AI needed just a bit more instability in the way she spoke to convey how her siblings saw her. She seemed more Fae Queen, which might be what Hannah wanted. I don't know, it's hard to tell, because, the Fae Queen are capricious, but she just didn't seem as crazy as I think that she really needs to stand out. The book is rock solid, just like last time, but there were no forward motions happening here at all, and it felt like it was riding on the big reveal at the end of book 1 to carry the story forward. And, it was a good reveal, but you need more than just like what happened in the last book to push the whole, you need more of an impetus to carry you from, the start of the book to the end of the book. And you need a big reveal at the end of the book to carry it into the third book. And I don't see a huge reveal or a shocking thing happen at the end of book 2, where I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen now? It didn't really stun me. The book is slice of life. And like I say, for me, that's a big issue for me, because I'm not a slice of life person. I need to see more things happen. And like I said, there were some strange things. I just don't get the need for a pet. And maybe, Snowy, the great big wolf that runs all the wolves, will have a really important reason for being there. I just haven't seen it. So we'll see where this goes. We'll see how this happens. It's hard to say. But Slice of Life is a fine if you have a point. But here, I think we just completely missed a whole lot of stuff, and I think we needed more. I was going to actually give this an 8, but I'm going to say 7.8, because the story does kind of slow down for me a little bit. The mystery of what was going on with Murmur was a big driving factor for me in the first book, and we didn't have that here. We kind of know what's going on. And we also know now why the AIs act the way they do and what they're doing and why they're doing things. So there's no mystery other than like why the one AI is trying to do what he's doing and why he's going rogue, that sort of thing. And that's not enough for me to go, wow, I just really had to find out. It was just one of those incidental things that it'll unfold when it unfolds. So, like I say, 7.8. I don't want to sound like I did not enjoy this book or don't recommend it. I liked the book a lot. I really did. KT Hannah has a really powerful writing style, and her characterizations are so spot on. But for me, the way Murmur behaved, I could get that for the first quarter or for the first half of the book, but it was like completely throughout the entire book, her behavior and anger over what happened from the first book. It just should have really kind of been healed up at some point. So I don't know. It didn't work as well. I really hope that we get more in the third book, because like I say, the momentum in the first book was just really great and it kept going, and I was okay with it because there were things that happened. There were big reveals and things that just kind of kept you wanting to know what was happening. There was the mystery, and when you get to it, you're like, oh crap, that was just really slick and really smart and just took you right into the story. Here, again, it's just a wave of what happened before and her yelling and whining and crying about it. So, and I get, people don't get over things quickly, but as a reader or a listener, I need a little bit of a break from that kind of an attitude. It wears you out. It's the same thing with the mother. The mother, she's trying, she can do everything she can to get her daughter out of the AI game, but how many times can you say that? Every time she appears, that's her goal. And I don't really see a lot of progression on that side either. So this was like tires in the mud just spinning. If you ever saw My Cousin Vinny, that's the way it was at Georgia Mud. When pause attraction, you can't go. So it just kind of just stayed right where it's at, which I know like Ramon, like he likes this sort of stuff. For me, I need a bit more. So like I said, 7.8 stars. KT, I really do enjoy the story. Andrea, you're always good, but like I said, I did need a little bit more from the is it Theron or Thera? I can't remember the AI's name. But I mean, it was all top notch. It was all top grade stuff. I just need a little bit more here and there to kind of convey what was going to happen or what was coming, or to keep me, going for the next book. I'll be there for book 3, but I do hope we get a little bit more revealed, or a little bit, how do I put this? Some things change. I need some change in the story to keep me interested, okay? 7.8 stars. All right, so today I'm going to do something completely different and new. All right, I know I've been doing not a lot, I've done 2, so let's be serious, there's not been a ton of them, but I've started introducing, is it lit RPG or is it not, as a segment. And a new segment I want to do, so I'm going to rotate these out, and I'll always give you at least, 3 to 4 lit RPG books at a minimum. I'll do that every week. Promise you I won't lower my count of lit RPG. But I'm also going to throw at you those other books just as a sort of a flavor, so you can get a feel for what else is out there. And this one is called What Else Have They Done? Now, this is where I'm going to take a look at works by narrators or authors who are pretty big in the lit RPG community, but they've done other things beside lit RPG. There's a lot of stuff that you might be surprised that other people have written that you've never looked at because it's not lit. And I really want to do this. And I've really gone back and forth on which book I should do first. Because when I first thought of this, I was like, of course, I did the dungeon special, and I wanted to, do different specials. I was going to do, is it lit or not? And what else have they done or not? And I thought about, why do, specials for those? But I can just add a segment, because it's a lot simpler to just do a segment. So this was one of those things, and I've been going back and forth because there's a couple people that I really think have works out there that should be spotlighted. And I kept saying, well, something, this is sponsored by Sound Booth Theater. So the first thing I should do should be something by Sound Booth Theater. And of course, I can't do Sound Booth Theater because Sound Booth Theater only, they do other stuff. But really, I have to go in and say this narrator specifically. So in this case, I'm going to start off with Jeff Hayes because, Jeff is my favorite narrator. I've never lied about that, but I've called him out on a couple things. All right, I'm fair about it. But this is one of those books, I got this just because Jeff Hayes narrated it. Okay, there was no other reason why I picked up this book. In fact, if Jeff had not been attached to this, I'd have never picked this book up. And so I'm really glad that I didn't pass it by, because it's a real treat. It's a real short treat, but it's a gem. The book is called On the Hit List. It's written by Timothy Dalton, narrated, like I said, by Jeff Hayes, but with a short length of only 4 hours and 38 minutes.
Chester doesn't answer my phone call, but answers my text in 4 seconds. Go figure. After a brief back and forth, he calls back. I don't give away any details through my messages because the Mafia can wiretap your phone and see everything. That's not really the reason. The timing for those events to actually happen doesn't make sense at this point. I honestly just don't know what to say. Hey, Chester, by the way, I ran into some Mafia guys and now I'm transporting at least 5 kilograms of coke. One of them is my boss and I'm scared out of my mind.
LSD? What's up, bro? Sorry, I had to call. Playing COD and can't be texting. I'm getting schooled by 12-year-olds.
Now, this is undoubtedly one of the funniest books I've ever read. The main character, Ellis D'Angelo, or LSD as his friends call him, as in LSD, provides a rapid-fire stream of consciousness barrage of random thoughts and raucous asides as he details how his crappy job goes from worse to even more horrible by delivering a sub with extra bread. If you ever get a call and somebody says, I want a sandwich with extra bread, beware, because that might just be code for something. Okay? The moment it starts, the story starts steamrolling along, as soon as he gets that call, and Ellis's troubles pile up like snow cascading down a mountain in an avalanche. One thing happens after another until he and his college roommates all find themselves in a countdown to come up with some missing mob money, or they're all going to be sleeping with the fishes. And I don't mean Abe Vigoda and Florence Stanley fishes from the TV show. Those guys. Okay? I'm talking Luca Brasi sleeping with the fishes. That one. Okay? That one is the one I'm talking about. Where, he gets... And then he's put in the water and he's held down. They never find a body, kind of sleeping with the fishes. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. Not Abe Vigoda. No. Not from Barney Miller. Again, there's old references. I know you guys don't even know who the hell Barney Miller is. Okay, but you get the idea. Okay, the trio, as dysfunctional as they can be, manage to work together in spite of whatever shortcomings they actually have. On the other hand, Ellis can never seem to gain any traction because his pals are like giant albatrosses hanging around his neck. If there is anything to take away from this story, it is to always go for the Princess Bride joke. Okay? I'm not going to let you in on it. Just always go for the Princess Bride joke. The writing is refreshingly witty, wry, and the quips never stop flying. I laughed out loud numerous times and giggled like a teenage girl for the rest of it. Each character brings something to the table that allows the others to play off of. And man, they bounce off each other like they were ping pong balls. All right, and seriously, it's a boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. It never ends. It's just really witty and funny, and I had a smile as I listened the whole way through. This is a great book, and it simply flew by. Of course, it was only 4.5 hours, but there was not enough of it. And I really want Ellis to get mixed up with the Yakuza or something else, just so we can get some more. Trust me, you will not regret getting this book. I think it's the book's length that makes it work so well. If it wasn't trimmed down, the humor would not have had such a great rhythm or pacing. And part of what makes the humor work is that it's one shot after another and not a hit and then a long pause. It's a that kind of a rapid fire attack. The frantic pace makes it funnier. Okay, the funny gets funnier every time because it just keeps building. And it's like a house of cards. If they didn't keep going, or one misstep, it's all going to collapse. And it does really well. Now, again, I told you, I only got this book because Jeff Hayes narrated it. He is the premier narrator in the land. And I have come to learn that anything he does is great. He doesn't pick stuff just for crap. And if you want to know the truth of it, I debated between this book and another book he narrated called Clan. And I might actually do that, maybe 7 or 8 months down the road as another aside, as I'm going through, once I've cycled through a lot of different writers and narrators, because Clan is a really good book. You might want to check that one out too. Shh, I didn't say it here. I'll say it later in the future, okay? But Jeff always elevates his material. To be blunt, the man knows how to read dialogue. If you just heard him from this book, you would absolutely believe he was Ellis speaking. I cannot say just how skilled and professional he is. And I have so many of his audiobooks that my kids will say to me, are you listening to that same book all the time? Because I do listen to Jeff a whole lot. I have to tell them it's a different book with the same narrator. And I usually try to make a comparison with Jeff to some other pop culture reference, like saying he is like Doctor Strange, only in this case he is the master of the vocal arts. But I'm not going to do that today. Now, I mean, I want to keep it real. Jeff keeps his stories fun, and by that I mean his enthusiasm for the book he is reading is always very clear, and he adds life to whatever he reads. If you are not familiar with this or him, give them a shot. Jeff Hayes does a really incredible job, and it's good to see him step outside of the genre. Like, for example, he just did R.R. Verdi's The Goblin King. Now, I first heard of R.R. Verdi because he's an urban fantasy writer, and I've been really hoping that he would get those books published on audiobook a long time ago. Well, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff Hayes and Sound Blue Theater will be doing those as audiobooks. So I'm really stoked because I'm a huge urban fantasy fan. All right. So that would be one of those books I could come back and say, hey, guess what? R.R. Verdi has something outside of the LitRPG genre. Okay. So that could be something in the future. I just want to wait till he gets a little bit more established. One book in LitRPG does not a LitRPG author make, unless that's your debut book. Okay. And again, that's not the case. But it's something for me to remember. But you won't be sorry if you stick with this. Really, check this book out. It's a whole lot of fun. It's very enjoyable. And like I say, I think about it periodically. because it does make me laugh so much. And anytime I go to make a sandwich now, if my wife says, "What do you want?" I'll say, make me a bologna sandwich, but with some extra bread. And she has no clue what the hell I'm talking about. And that makes my life happier, and I smile for it. And then I get a triple-deck sandwich with a piece of bread in the middle, and I'm like, what the... Who eats bologna sandwiches with 3 slices of bread? Dagwood. I'm not Dagwood. I'm not Durwood, and I'm not Dagwood. So I don't eat 3 pieces of bread in my sandwich. But I still have to say it every time she asks me. So, just enjoy this. It's an off-the-road thing from LitRPG, but it's worth the time and the effort and the energy and the listen. 4.5 hours, not overwhelming, but it's really enjoyable. It's really enjoyable, and I think that you deserve to get out and listen to other things. I'm sure you don't just, the people that listen to this podcast or read LitRPG, there's no one out there that just reads LitRPG. But this is one of those books that, Jeff has narrated. So you ought to give it a shot just because Jeff did this. So the next time I might be doing a book by James Hunter. I won't reveal what it is, but it will be one of those books that's not LitRPG. So again, this is just a new segment. Next week we'll be doing another Is It LitRPG or Not? And then the week after that, we'll see what I have for this segment. What else do they do? Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this. Check this out. It's well worth the time and energy that you would put into it. I can't recommend it more because it's just a really funny book. And again, as I said just recently with another book in this episode, it ain't rocket science, it ain't Shakespeare, and it doesn't have to be. It's just about the funny. It's just about the funny, and it really is. It's funny, and you'll laugh. And if you like to laugh, this is a book you'll get. Okay, you'll really love it. So give her a shot. Well, that's the show, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I deeply appreciate you taking the time to watch or listen to the show. Again, if you want to support us, you can like the LitRPG Podcast Facebook page or the YouTube page, or just share and like the videos. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, even YouTube. And that's what I recommend because I do stupid things sometimes. I do stupid things. Sometimes on the videos, just for people who are watching. So if you're listening, you may not catch on to everything. And again, I don't know if you realize, but this week, I'm going to try and mix it up every so often. I have been doing a nice little special called, at the end of the show, called, What Is It LitRPG or Not? Today I'm going to do What Else Have They Done? So we're going to try and mix that up to see some of the things that authors or narrators in the LitRPG genre are doing outside of that, just for fun, because you may be missing out something you would really enjoy otherwise. So I'm going to be interposing and interchanging those two things. So next week we should have a new Is It Lit or Not segment, and the week after that we'll have What Else Have They Done? So again, I appreciate you listening. For the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast, I am Ray, your humble reviewer. Again, thank you all for listening, and have a good afternoon. Keep listening, guys.